Do not make the same mistakes I made, and you will see some results. In no particular order, here are some things that I did in my past that just did not allow me to get great results, and how to overcome them, what I did differently to make sure that it wasn't hindering my progress anymore. The first one is changing your nutrition plan only after 2 weeks of starting your nutrition plan. That will guarantee you no good results at all. At least a bare minimum, a month or two or more, you'll actually start to see some results. And of course, this is a case by case scenario depending on where you're starting at, what your goal is, and what your plan is as well. But definitely general consensus, 2 weeks. You can't just keep switching back and forth and yo-yo dieting. That's what that's called. It's not gonna do anything great for what you're trying to do. Whether it's to gain or lose or recomp, it doesn't help at all. One of my biggest problems was eating enough protein in my meals. It's super easy for me to eat a high amount of carbs or a high amount of fat, but when it comes to protein, it's super low. And one thing that really makes that hard to do is eating fast food. It's hard to get enough protein in your meals when it's from a fast food choice. A lot of fast food options tend to have a higher fat content, so that's already gonna derail you immensely. This is where just home cooked meals are going to be way better. I digress. I noticed that eating as much protein as possible in my breakfast and lunch actually sets me up pretty well for the day too. So by the time the evening comes, I'm not cramming before bedtime, if that makes sense. I set myself up for the day so that I can hit my macros, so that I'm not stuck last minute trying to fit 70 grams of protein in one meal before I have to go to bed. Most times I was just not hitting my macros when I was doing it like that. So good breakfast and or a good lunch, and that will set you up good. And that leads me to another huge mistake I was making. I would not only not portion my meals properly, but in addition to not portioning my meals properly, I'd be having these big old meals before going to bed. And what that would do is prevent me from actually having decent deep sleep, which if I do fall asleep, okay, yeah, I'm sleeping, but I'm not actually getting quality sleep where it's that repairing type of like regenerative type sleep. I just wake up tired, groggy, as if I didn't spend the past 9 hours sleeping. So it's something I try not to play around with anymore. Eating too much before I go to sleep or eating too close to when I go to sleep, and the types of foods that I eat prior to going to sleep as well. All of that plays a role. You would think that dinner would have to be the heaviest meal because dinner, right? Usually dinners are heavy, but I find it easier to eat a heavier lunch. So a decent breakfast with high protein, a heavy lunch. So that's where a good amount of my protein and or calories will be, because I'll have the rest of the day to work off the calories and have that food move so that it's not like just sitting in my system and not getting digested. So I would have that as my second meal of the day. And then my third meal of the day would be just a regular portion. It would not be something heavy. It would not be something spicy for sure. Definitely not anything acidic, because then I'll start to burp up that stuff and it's just gross. Okay, this last tip is not diet related, but it is eye-opening and has made a huge difference. There is different types of cardio training that exists in zones, and it has to do with your heart rate and how much capacity of your heart you're using in terms of intensity of it. There's zones 1 through 5. Zone 5 would be your heart beating at its absolute max. And then zone 1 would be when you're just sitting, just casual. So the range is through that. A lot of my cardio, I realized after the fact, even like going through my Apple Watch info, a lot of my cardio training I thought was in a zone 2, but it was not. And the reason why that's significant, zone 2 training is the type of cardio that taps into the most fat usage. And when you are trying to keep as much muscle as possible while trying to lose as much fat, you want to maximize any types of cardio. So you want to tap into that type of training that will favor fat burning more than the other zones. So zone 1, it does burn fat too, but at a much slower, lower pace. And we're talking like you're going to be on the treadmill like forever. Zone 1 isn't really going to train my heart. It's more of a recovery, warm up type of like heart zone. But zone 2, which I just finally started paying more attention to, spending more time in, I have noticed a huge difference. And my first couple of days doing zone 2 training was really interesting. My chest was like sore, like a sore muscle, and that was such a wake-up call because it just screamed how my heart was underutilized and I didn't even realize it. And it's weird too because I would still weight train, I would still be like spending like 30 minutes on the treadmill, right? Just high incline walking is what I do. I would just put on a TV show, go watch it, finish the episode, and then I'll be done with my cardio. Like, great, right? But it wasn't quite in the area that really tapped into good training for my heart / the fat burning effects that are needed. And I was wondering if I was going too hard at one point too, if zone 2 was too much. But according to the formula to calculate the zones that you are in, right where I'm supposed to be, which means I really truly was just underutilizing my heart and not really giving the intensity that was needed for cardio. Now, zone 2 training is not supposed to be hard training. The zone 2 training that I was doing, I did 2 types to tap into this. So the first type I did, I mentioned already, it was the high incline walking. Like I mentioned, I just put on a show and I just walk the whole time, and it's decent. In the beginning, it felt a little tough, but again, I wanted to make sure that I was into zone 2 training versus zone 1 training. So I gave myself a little bit of push, and after a while I did adjust. It did take some adjusting, but now I'm just casually on there. I can have a conversation. It doesn't sound like or feel like I'm working hard, but it's a really beneficial pace that I'm at for my heart and to be able to burn as much fat as possible. So that's great stuff. So I'm doing a new program where I'm prioritizing my upper glute, and that's something I can talk about in a separate video, but I'm going back to basic. Those basics include outdoor exercises that it's just me and my body weight, and at most I would have a band. And I'm really focusing on mind to muscle connection because my upper glute is so underdeveloped because of how much lower glute dominance I have. So nevertheless, some walking lunges, just plain old walking lunges, that gets me at zone 2 real easy. No weight, no nothing, just body weight walking lunges. And sprints are also another cardio exercise that can help with muscle growth because of the amount of power that you have to use to burst into the movement, and it takes a lot of lower body power. If you've ever seen the legs of sprinters, that right there is a great telltale sign of what sprinting can do for your legs. There's also other movements that can be done outside, like hip thrusts and some mobility work and things like that requires some dynamic movement. So a combination of that was really getting my heart going in that zone 2 area when I was doing that outdoor workout, and I'm super glad to add that on as well now that it's just really nice to get outside and get some sun on me. Those are all tips that I've ran into that I've had to figure out the long and hard way, and hopefully one of these things really stuck with you. And I know they're like random-ish, but I really didn't know how to categorize these. But you know, if the message gets to you, then you know it did its thing. If you have questions down below, please let me know. I love answering questions, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.